Welcome into Yahoo Sports Daily. Happy Friday to everybody listening out there. And I know, may not feel like the happiest of Fridays waking up after a loss for the USMNT. And Taylor Twellman will join us a little bit later in the show. We'll get his perspective and his soccer knowledge on what exactly went wrong for USMNT last night. But important to remember, this is not the end of the world. They will still advance. That game didn't have the utmost importance for the future of the USMNT in the World Cup. So let's get into all of it. A 3-2 loss at the hands of Türkiye last night, and it came in devastating fashion since that Türkiye winning goal came in the final minute of the 7 extra minutes that we saw last night. But Coley, should the team be frustrated at conceding that late winner, or should it take some peace, some solace in a performance that saw some of the team's less experienced players grow in a mostly meaningless game?
Yeah, I mean, it was a mostly meaningless game. There wasn't really much to gain from this other than playing some of these reserves who weren't seeing a whole lot of action in the start of the World Cup in the first 2 matches. In fact, the U.S. came into this game, made 9 changes to its starting 11 lineup going into this one. Just a chance to get really some fresh bodies in the games in the match, to get some of those other players who were either in yellow card trouble or also had some nicks and knacks and injuries of their own, to get them some time off their feet as they go into the knockout stage. Because at this point, the knockout stage is what's most important. Team USA, the U.S. men's national team, has already done what so many people weren't sure if they were going to be able to do, and that is getting out of the group stage. Not just getting out of the group stage, but winning the group stage. And they did that in convincing fashion through the first 2 matches. So it was meaningless in the sense that nothing's going to change on the overall tally for what you need to win the World Cup. But what does change is you get a chance to see the development of the rest of the team. You had a chance to see the U.S. men's national team still score a lot of goals. They scored multiple goals for the 3rd straight game. They had a chance to be down. You know, they were trailing in this match at one point 2-1. Had a chance to equalize it late in the second half. So seeing that comeback from this team was important as you move forward to show that this isn't a team that's going to give up. And then, of course, the game-winning goal for Türkiye coming there in the final minute of extra time certainly was a bit of a backbreaker, but not all hope is lost. You also had Christian Pulisic come out and have a chance to play after being banged up for parts of the first 2 matches of this World Cup. So many things to glean that are positive. And I think the other big positive is that on top of the U.S. scoring multiple goals in this game, there were 8 goals total scored in this World Cup by the U.S. men. The reason why that number is so important is because that number has never been amassed by the U.S. men in a single World Cup. 8 goals scored. The most they had was 7 prior to this one. That just is a sign of the efficiency and production that we've seen from these goal scorers. And they didn't even have their leading goal scorer in the match because he was one of those players who was getting rested for this one. So even though it's a loss, there's so much positive to glean from this, and I think the U.S. men should feel good as they get ready for the knockout stage beginning on Wednesday.
You mentioned Christian Pulisic coming out. It was, I believe, the 58th minute. And when he came out to hear the eruption of cheers at SoFi Stadium, it gave me chills. It was so cool to see. I mean, finally, we got to see Christian Pulisic out there on the pitch for the first time since, the first half against Paraguay. I do understand maybe a certain sense of disappointment, a certain sense of, anxiety is probably not the right word for it, but you know what I mean. That sense of nerves, that sense of nervousness whenever you lose in a tournament like this. And I can understand why. I just think it's inherently American that we just want to win everything. And I get it. And when you don't win everything, and especially in the fashion in which the U.S. lost last night, when it looked like they were headed for a draw, and then Türkiye got that 3rd goal very late in extra time, that's a little bit more of a punch to the gut. But I was listening to Mauricio Pochettino's post-game press conference, and he got several questions about, like, is this a disappointment? What does this do for momentum? And Mauricio Pochettino was like, I don't understand what you mean with momentum. Like, I don't understand that concept. No, this doesn't do anything for our momentum. So Tyler Adams, Balogun, Anthony Robinson, Chris Richards, they were all sitting on yellow cards. We didn't see Christian Pulisic until the second half. He was like, this is not the team that we're going to be playing with for the entirety of the tournament. But what those guys did get, some of those reserves did get, was quality and important match experience and in game minutes that are probably going to be invaluable as the U.S. continues to go throughout this tournament. Depth, we know, in any form or fashion, in any sport, but especially in a tournament like this, depth is of the utmost importance. So you're getting some of those guys live action minutes. I mean, Mauricio Pochettino even called the question about like a disappointment. He said, he said, that was a weird question. That's weird. Like, no, we're not disappointed. We won. Like, sorry to remind everybody, like, we won. Sure, it stinks to lose a battle, but we won the war. So just hearing Mauricio Pochettino talk about it, of course, I knew and we all knew that this game was essentially, in the grand scheme of things, totally and completely unimportant. But to hear Mauricio Pochettino, the head man in charge of the USMNT, talk about it, like, why is everybody freaking out so much? I'm like, yeah, why is everybody freaking out so much? It was a game, and of course, you want to win every single time. You're out there on the court, you're out there on the pitch, you're out there on the field, you're out there wherever you might be, whenever you're representing the Stars and Stripes. But the USMNT is in a good position moving forward. But I guess there's a question about Christian Pulisic moving forward. Do you think that was the right decision from Mauricio Pochettino to put Christian Pulisic in with the injury question marks in a game that was essentially meaningless?
Yeah, well, last night after the game, I was actually working another one of my gigs, and that was a question that I had for our soccer analyst, CBS Sports soccer analyst Charlie Davies, who also played on the U.S. men's national team at one point in time, and I was curious to know what his take was on the importance of seeing Pulisic, who's dealing with this calf injury, who you mentioned played in the first half of the opening game against Paraguay. What it meant that he actually got out there, what that meant for him, and he gave me a great answer about you don't want to just go into an important game like a knockout stage game and all you've done is light jogging and a little bit of running on a side field. You want to actually get into game action and cut. You want to plant. You want to accelerate, decelerate. You want to do all of these things in order to just test the legs to make sure the legs are going to hold up and to make sure the legs are operating at game speed. Because remember, he's been going through some individual training on his own. He hasn't really practiced with the team this last week and a half or so, or whatever it's been now. So he hasn't really had a chance to go where his adrenaline is going. His energy is raised into the stratosphere. He hasn't had a chance to get to the point that he would be if he was playing in a live game. And so he did that by all accounts, looked like he handled it well, had a couple of scoring opportunities, of course, didn't end up getting into the back of the net, but still looked strong. The offense at times looked like the attack was really on when he was on the field there in the second half. So it feels like it was a good chance for Pulisic to get that calf tested out to see what he could do, but also for the rest of the team to get a sense of how it could flow within him and with him being back on the pitch, because we haven't seen him, again out there in the last couple of matches. So I think it was a good thing for US to run out Pulisic in this one. And, I think it's just going to do nothing but help. There is a logic to be said about having rest when it comes to dealing with an injury and recovering from an injury, but there's also a thing to be said about the inactivity of rust and what that can bring. So getting that action going for him certainly feels like it's going to help as Team USA gets going in at the knockout stage.
And there was such a noticeable difference once Christian Pulisic came in. And it wasn't just the energy and excitement in the building, it was a noticeable difference for the entire team. Because the majority of the first half, I was looking around like, my goodness, is this Türkiye team just like going at supersonic speed? Like in the first half specifically, the US just looked outmatched. The US just looked like they were slower than Türkiye, which again is to be expected when you're playing with your reserves that are just trying to get, and acquire some minutes on the field. But I just thought, wow, like Türkiye looked like the better team for a majority of the first half. And all of a sudden, Christian Pulisic comes in and it is a noticeable difference. All of a sudden, everything just felt a little bit more organized. All of a sudden, it felt like the entire team was playing with a different level of energy. It was like Christian Pulisic was the human defibrillator. It's like he just kind of did this and then and everybody was like just electrified once he came onto the pitch. So I think that is just the Christian Pulisic effect and shows just how important and instrumental he is to the culture, to the vibe, to the energy, and to the execution of the U.S. men's national team. So that was very cool to see there. I do totally and completely understand the concern of, well, why would you put him in a game that doesn't really mean anything? Because if he gets injured even further, well, now all of a sudden he's out for even longer, for even more important games with higher stakes against teams that are going to be far more competitive than a Türkiye team or an Australia team that really only plays defense. Like, I can understand that line of thinking. But I don't think that Mauricio Pochettino would have put Christian Pulisic in that game if he thought the risk far outweighed the reward. He knows the medicals. Christian Pulisic knows how he feels. And I think at a certain extent, Mauricio Pochettino himself has to kind of trust Christian Pulisic and how he feels in his body and how he felt ready to go. And at this point, you just hope it was an opportunity for Captain America to knock the rust off a little bit. But USMNT will advance to the round of 32. They will play Bosnia and Herzegovina coming up in the next round. And of course, we will react to this game with Taylor Twellman as we do every single Friday. We'll also preview the next game in the round of 32, of course. But coming up next, we had a bombshell yesterday in the NBA. LaMelo Ball is headed to Minnesota. Walker Mehl, insider for the Charlotte Hornets, joins us coming up next.
Do you have any advice that you could give to Christian Pulisic about how to handle this World Cup?
I think if he can find a zone where he is that kid again that is on the field with his buddies, and these are his buddies, this national team, these guys are close, and just understand not overthink the opportunity and the pressure and the home World Cup, but be like, what a privilege it is for us to be on this field right now representing the United States.
He's gotta lock it in.
Right here, under 8, down by 3. It's one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league. Fired, caught, open space in front. Karan Ashley still on his feet inside the 5, touchdown! This is again why we love the indoor football league.
I'll take it as a miss because it didn't work. But I still think this guy has the potential to become a star in this league. I was super on the train of draft Jonathan Kuminga. And so I'd have to say that that's my miss, but not miss from the standpoint of Killian Hayes type of miss. Miss from the standpoint of ultimately it didn't work. And now he's trying to and will figure it out, I think, in Atlanta.
We'll see how things go. And this is the kickoff here by Kevin Macias, who was a Sugar Skull until 2 weeks ago. And the return up to the races, Aaron Jackson. Touchdown, Sugar Skulls returning the opening kickoff.
This is outstanding. And you know what's funny? So I was downstairs, and Mr. Jackson came up to me. He was like, hey, man, I appreciate you saying good things about me. I was like, look, if you make plays, I'm going to say good things. So if you want me to keep saying great things about you, keep making plays.
Trading LaMelo Ball from the Hornets, that's like y'all trading Michael Jordan off the Chicago Bulls. Y'all already didn't give us Kobe Bryant. Y'all keep messing up the team chemistry. He was the hottest on the team. He bought us all the ticket sales. He made the most points on the team. It was nobody else better than him.
He made it beautiful to watch.
I swear, he made it great to watch. He made us want to come here. Man, look at my man's on side the building, looking good.
Now they gotta take that picture.
Now they gotta take them off, man. It's crazy.
Man, comparing LaMelo Ball to Michael Jordan in Chicago is a very bold comparison, but they're not wrong. LaMelo Ball did make it beautiful.
He made it
watch
beautiful
in
to
Charlotte.
watch.
He made it beautiful to
that's
watch.
the thing. That's the thing.
That came from the soul too. That came from the heart. That came from a deep place there. From those two Charlotte Hornet fans outside of the Spectrum Center, where LaMelo Ball played his NBA career, but not anymore because he is shipping over to Minnesota. So joining us now is Walker Mehl, co-host of the Locked On Hornets podcast. Walker, what has been the overwhelming reaction from the LaMelo Ball trade from this Hornets fan base?
Not quite as strong as my guy right outside the Spectrum Center. I do think if you were to ask what take was the most accurate one, what was the microcosm of what the entire city is feeling, I think it's the guy in shotgun that's saying it was beautiful to watch. And we don't get to watch that in a Hornets uniform anymore. I don't know if anybody thought he was Michael Jordan. Maybe we got close a couple of times, but it was beautiful to watch. Such a fun basketball player, where I think I would push back quite a bit on what the national narrative was, saying that he wasn't a winning basketball player. I always thought if you put the right team around him, that they could win a whole bunch of basketball games. We saw him get to the play-in early on in his career as a rookie and as a sophomore. And then this past season, they put the right team around him, and they were fantastic in 2026. Once everybody got healthy, Brandon Miller comes back, LaMelo's healthy, they started winning basketball games to the point where they beat Oklahoma City, San Antonio, they beat New York. I think they beat them a couple times, if I'm not mistaken, but they beat all of these playoff teams. And LaMelo was the offensive engine that drove everything on that end of the floor. I could bore you with all of the analytics and the net rating. Just know that they were absolutely sensational. The city, I would say, if you were looking for a percentage, I think that they were 75% sad and angry and maybe 20% understanding, and then 5% happy, right? There weren't many people that were overjoyed to watch him walk out the building. I think a lot of people understood it, but a lot of people also just want to see him play basketball next season because we had already gotten over the issues, right? This is someone that before the 72 game appearance that he had this past year, before that it was 47, before that it was 22. Before that, it was 36, and that's why coming into this year, this was going to be the season of, hey, man, if you don't play 50 games, that's what we need. If you don't play 50, then we're going to have to move on. But he did, and we saw success, and there were a lot of people that thought that they could win 50 games next season, actually contend in the postseason. But now he's not going to be around for it. So you just, okay, the math isn't mathing. He was here. We won. Now we're good, right? We left all those issues in the past. But they moved on from him anyway to go get assets and unprotected first. The pick swaps, there's one unprotected pick swap. The other pick swaps don't look like they're actually going to amount to anything. We don't even know if those are ever going to materialize for Charlotte. So I understand the move, and it's a bet against his health. It might be a bet against the lack of physicality that you need to win postseason games. And it might be a bet that you can get better with the other assets that you collected watching LaMelo walk out the door. It doesn't make it all that much easier, though, for Hornets fans to swallow, certainly not within the first 24 hours of the trade.
Walker, I've got two questions for you, but first I want to stick kind of with the theme of that being beautiful basketball. What was it about basketball in Charlotte with LaMelo Ball that made it so beautiful to watch?
That he was 5 steps ahead, that he knew where you were going to be on the court. He did make everybody better, and the numbers bear that out, as we've talked about. But I was talking about this yesterday. The magic of LaMelo is that every single pass is possible as long as he has a fingernail on the basketball. When he would drive, and then there would be a last-second hand in a passing lane, and then he would have to make a split-second decision to move the basketball in a different direction, he could do it, and he could do it with power and accuracy. There's no way that you should be throwing fireballs in the restricted area right when you're about to hit the ground. And it's going to be a travel if you do, but just fireballing to the corner for a wide open three where Khan, Brandon, whoever it was, they were going to knock it down. And there were some great behind the back passes from half court that we can all remember from his time in a Hornets uniform. The shot selection, while much maligned, and I get it, okay? The situational awareness, you could scratch your head a little bit in the final 2 minutes of a tight game in the fourth quarter. He hit a lot of the step back shots. He hit a lot of the one-legged shots. Like, there's a reason you would see him on SportsCenter top 10 pretty frequently. It was because he hit a lot of those shots that were absolutely mind-blowing that nobody would even try. Like, those aren't shots that you're supposed to even attempt on an NBA court. He would do it, and he was effective at it. That's what made him magic. He was unique. Like, LaMelo, he calls himself rare, right? I think rare might actually be underselling it. LaMelo is unique. There's not another guy in the NBA like him.
So what are the Wolves getting in him?
An offensive engine next to their other offensive engine. I mean, look, if you got a car with two engines, should be going pretty fast. That's something I like to see out there on the road. Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball, I think, can play really well with one another. If you're looking for some of the, I think, stories about LaMelo that I don't deem to be true, like people would think, hey, if he's a magician, he needs the basketball in his hands all the time. LaMelo just wants to go out there and ball. He really doesn't care. Like, teammates love him. He's fun to play basketball with, and he's really good off ball. Like, you can set screens up for him, and then, the Hornets like to set flare screens, just having him fade a little bit further away from the basketball. And so if you can hit that pass, which Minnesota can, LaMelo's going to get a lot of open threes from Anthony being the guy that is the engine there for a little while, and they can, share responsibility being the driving force. But the fact that LaMelo can play off ball really well, and Anthony Edwards can too, I think those guys are going to be hilarious to watch. One, like the comedy factor in this is going to be absolutely wild. The basketball factor, though, the stuff that matters, that's going to be a lot of fun too, with both of those guys creating sweet music with one another.
I would love to be a fly on the wall for just one LaMelo and Ant conversation, because
I think we'll get to be. I think we're going to see it on the microphone.
I hope so.
They're not holding back. Like, I mean, we're going to be able to see it in public. So I'm with you there.
They never have. So why start now? Why hold back now? But the words you've used to describe LaMelo, rare, unique, beautiful basketball, you don't give up a guy that brings those attributes for nothing. So Charlotte gets Naz Reid, a first-round pick, a couple of pick swaps in the first round, and a whole mess of second-round picks in exchange for LaMelo Ball. Was that enough?
In a vacuum, it wasn't. I don't think it was. But we can't grade these trades in a vacuum. It's all about what they do next. So Jeff Peterson has almost a $41 million trade exception. It's the largest trade exception we've seen in NBA history. It just allows you to absorb so much money while legally circumventing the salary cap. That's a great asset to have. That's a big, big salary. So you put that to the side. You have an unprotected first. You have the unprotected pick swap. Those are great assets. So, okay, even while I don't think that it quite reached the level to the value I saw LaMelo bring to the court, again, we can't grade it just within the trade that we already saw. We're going to have to grade this thing once we figure out what Jeff Peterson is going to do with the unprotected first-round pick and with that trade exception. And you got to use the exception. This is not something that just lasts every single year. You don't lose $10 million a year. There's nothing like that. You got it for the season, and if you don't use it, bye-bye. You just pretty much lit that asset on fire, which is why Doug and I joke about this all the time on Locked On Hornets, but anytime anybody trades anybody, they're not done. They're doing something else. They're not done. So I'm going to have to be that guy, right? The Hornets are not done. They can't be. If you have a real shot at getting into at least the top 5, possibly top 4 in the Eastern Conference standings next year, lofty, but certainly possible with the way that they were playing in the second half last season with everybody healthy, and you give up on your best player when that was on the table for you next season, then you don't get any better, or you stall out, or maybe even get worse. It's going to be a terrible look, which is why this is a big risk to get rid of LaMelo. I don't think one for one the value reached the level of LaMelo Ball that I got to see out there on the floor at the Spectrum Center every single time they suited up. But if they parlay this into Jaylen Brown, if they parlay it into Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, Trey Murphy, pick whatever star you want to that might be available that the Hornets might be aggressive in going after. If they parlay those assets into that, and then they use the trade exception into something else, because they can't use the trade exception for anybody that has a bigger salary than that, which would include Jaylen Brown and some of the other stars out there. So now you're thinking about even bringing two big pieces here. If you do that, that's going to be the best medicine for everybody to deal with this LaMelo thing.
Yeah, sticking with that theme, you said that you don't think the Hornets are done. You kind of rattled off a few names there, but who do you think Charlotte might go after next?
Yeah, I mean, so we got to start with Jaylen Brown. There's the connection with head coach Charles Lee. Those guys were together the year that the Celtics won the championship. It was the only year that Charles Lee was under Joe Mazzulla. I covered the Hornets, did a lot of sideline work for them this past season. Now I wish I would have paid a lot more attention to the Charles Lee, Jaylen Brown interaction. I wish I would have heard, hey, man, we're coming to get you. I wish I could have heard something like that. I didn't. But I do know that those guys were dapping each other up. It was all smiles after the game. It felt like the Celtics really, really liked Charles Lee, and the feeling was reciprocated. So I have to imagine that relationship was quite good. And if you're looking for someone to provide more rim pressure, that has championship experience, that's an all-NBA player, just someone that was top 10 in MVP voting this past season. And I think Jaylen Brown proved that he can be a guy, at least for the regular season. And then once they got to the postseason, we know what happened to Boston in that scenario. But, man, great year for Boston when nobody expected them to do that, to finish that high in the Eastern Conference standing. So if you start with Jaylen, I think the only question that you have is, what are you going to give up? You got to match some salary. Miles Bridges is, I think, the best to guess at who's out next. So if it's Miles, who's making about $22 million this season, do you immediately flip Naz Reid and get rid of both of your power forwards for Jaylen Brown? That would, I think, be something palatable. That would be my preference. If I had to get Naz Reid in there, I'd like to get maybe, who knows, Grant Williams, Tijan Salan, whatever. There are a bunch of different ways to try to get up to the salary. The Brandon Miller question is the biggest one, though, if you're going after Jaylen. Because, okay, Kobe White, Con Knipple, that's your starting backcourt. Brandon Miller, Jaylen Brown in this scenario, Moussa Diabate, still pretty small. Naz Reid is supposed to be in there, right? Unless you flip him, whatever. But Jaylen Brown, Brandon Miller, are you just going to go small with Miller and Brown being the 3-4? I think it's a little bit of a problem. I don't think it's enough of a problem for me to just say, no, I'm good on the All-NBA player. And I don't think it's enough of a problem for me to say, okay, well, you can just take our other best asset in Brandon Miller, so it's a cleaner fit. I don't think those two answers are the thing to do if you're going to go after him. But yeah, there are a lot of players out there, and the Hornets, they have a lot of flexibility, in part now because of trading LaMelo to Minnesota.
Obviously, Jaylen Brown is the biggest name on the market, but maybe the newest name that could potentially be on the market, according to Sam Amick reporting this morning. Detroit's all-NBA forward Jalen Duren was reportedly, quote, underwhelmed by the Pistons' initial offer and restricted free agency, and is planning to explore sign and trade scenarios. Would Jalen Duren make sense in Charlotte?
I mean, after the brawl this past year, if you go out and you get the dude that started all of it, I would be, you talk about being a fly on the wall. I want to be in the room when Jeff Peterson goes to Moussa Diabate and said, yeah, man, you know the dude that mushed you, like one of the more disrespectful things you can do to a player? We got him. You're actually starting in the front court with him. Let's go play ball. Suit him up, boys. Yeah, that would be tough. It's so soon, too. It's not like you did it 5 years after the fact. You did it the day after the fact. And I'll tell you, man, these two teams, they played again in the penultimate game of the regular season. They hate each other. It's straight up hate. It's very real. There was the clip of LaMelo saying a whole bunch of stuff, I can't say right now, to Beef Stew, who I guess since got traded, and Jalen Duren. Did he suit up for that game? Maybe he didn't. But they hate each other. So, okay, it's a business. You can't make moves predicated off of fights in the NBA. But, there are dust-ups, there are scuffles, and then there are outright, hey, I want to punch you in the face a bunch of times. And the last part is what that was. And so if you think that you can get over all of that, then you go after him. He would fill a need, and it would right some wrongs because, they drafted Jalen Duren, and then they traded him for what we knew at the time was a worse pick. And me and Doug, Locked On Hornets, it's probably our most depressing episode we've ever put out there. The lights went off in the hotel from the place that Doug was doing the episode. It was kind of ominous in that regard. So if you brought him back, I know. If you brought him back, maybe it would right those wrongs, but I don't know if Musa cares about it. I don't know how much the Hornets care about the Locked On Hornets episode and how depressed we were. That would be the ultimate question you'd have to ask. He would fill a need, though. He would absolutely fill a need.
Bedlam at the Spectrum is what we were calling that. Not quite Malice at the Palace. Not that good, but maybe honorable mention. Walker Mehl, you can find him. He's the co-host of Locked On Hornets, along with our producer extraordinaire, Doug Branson. You guys make all of us smarter basketball fans, smarter Hornets fans. So appreciate you for stopping by, Walker. We'll talk with you soon.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you. All right, coming up next, it might feel gross. It might feel weird, but it makes too much sense. We'll explain what it is coming up next.
There was a big bright light shining on the hall, and I saw these two figures, and they were coming. I couldn't see who they were. It was just like dark, shadowy figures. And then we walked past them. I was just talking to Jeff, and they were talking about before we started signing about how it goes. And then grabbed me from behind. He's like, hey, he says, you're not even going to say hello to me? You're doing that? And it was Taker. I said, I had no idea it was you, but that's so cool. It's so good to see you, man. I gave him a hug, and I said, man, I got to tell you, I said, I'm super excited for you, man. Are you excited for Dave Meltzer to give you the Booker of the Year award? And he said, shut up,
Myles Garrett traded to the Rams. They're trying to live in two worlds where they've got an eye on the future with the quarterback they took this year, but also clearly, maybe more than any other team we've seen, trying to push here for a Super Bowl, which God, the burden of expectations is going to be tough on that team this year. Like it is, sometimes I kind of roll my eyes at the Super Bowl or bust idea, but this really is like, that's it. Like Super Bowl or bust. Everything else it would be a failure of a season.
Got to get a touchdown on this possession. Stepping up Garrett. Garrett surveying. He wants it all. End zone Flavors is there, but it's pulled away by Cook. Cook pulled it out of the air and out of the hands of Flavors for a Northern Arizona touchdown.
That just happened. In my mind, I'm thinking INT, ball game's over. Marlon Cook says, give me this. I need it.
I grew up in Colombia, so soccer was our life. We grew up watching it, during the weekends. We all would go to the stadium, whatever. When I moved to the United States, I kind of lost that, passion for it. But I wait for the World Cup, and then I'm back. You remember what happened in '94?
No, I remember. I don't know if you were going to bring it up, but I remember.
Yeah, the U.S.
No, I'm not going to bring it up. I'm just saying.
No, nobody brought it up. Nobody brought it up.
We're not even talking.
All right, what you can see here in this video is Rich Paul chatting it up with Clippers owner Steve Ballmer once upon a time. I want to ask you a very long question. So which agency represents Ty Lue, Clippers head coach? Which agency represents Clippers star guard Darius Garland? And which agency also represents Clippers starting forward Derrick Jones? Putting you on the spot here, Coley.
I'm going to say Rich Paul's Clutch Sporting Agency. I'm guessing that's what it is.
Ding, ding, ding. Give him a prize because that is correct. Clutch and Rich Paul represents all three. So we're really going to get in our conspiracy theory bag here. If you've ever seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, that Charlie Day meme where he has bags under his eyes and he's got all of these pictures connecting the dots, that's going to be us here for a moment. So bear with us. LeBron, also repped by Rich Paul and Clutch. There we are. That's us. We have heard all reports that LeBron and the entire family loves Los Angeles. That's their home. We know that LeBron has several business ventures outside of basketball that are pretty advantageous to be in LA for. We know LeBron likes the comfortable lifestyle. We know LeBron likes the golf. We're talking so much about LeBron to the Heat, LeBron to Golden State, LeBron here, LeBron there, LeBron back to Cleveland. Are the Clippers hiding in plain sight?
Ooh. Ooh. You know, there's so many thoughts that I have on this. I feel like I'm here for the wild conspiracy theory chaos of this. It feels like, wow, this is a team that no one's talking about, no one would even think of talking about. And I think there are some reasons probably as to why. But yeah, when you think about the connections that exist here, specifically in the agency space, I mean, agents in the sports world, whether it's sports media or even in athletics, there is a lot that they do behind the scenes that connects the dots and links teams and links gigs, links opportunities for players and for leagues to exist. So I think there could be some smoke and fire here with this. I don't know if I'm fully ready to buy all the way in on it happening. I mean, there's a lot going on with the Clippers, of course, with the investigation that the league is going through right now in terms of the allegations of salary cap circumvention and tampering in that regard that the Clippers have been part of. Would LeBron James want to be part of all of that chaos, even though he would be coming in presumably after that investigation is completed, whenever that may come? I don't know. I don't know if he'd want to be part of all of that. Is this just purely coincidence? There's also that as well. I mean, Rich Paul, to his credit, has done a great job in building his business and reaching out to athletes and coaches and making them clients. And maybe it is pure coincidence that he just has all these guys on the Clippers at the same time that LeBron James is in Los Angeles. Who knows? But I do think that this is one of those really fun games that we can kind of say, oh, maybe there's something here that nobody's actually thinking about, and we can have a little fun off-season game with this.
I think agencies, agent relationships is one of the more under-talked about aspects of sports in general. I'll go back to, just because I cover and have covered college sports for a very long time, when Nick Saban retired. Nick Saban is repped by Jimmy Sexton. When he retired, all of a sudden, Steve Sarkisian, Mike Norvell, Dan Lanning, all got extensions. Very healthy, long, and lucrative extensions. You know what those guys all had in common? They were all repped by Jimmy Sexton. So he thought the retirement of one of my clients just means a richer deal for so many other of my clients. And of course, he represents so many coaches across the college football landscape. But still, having that tie of having the same agent can kind of explain a lot of things that you might see. And that's not just in college football. That's across sports in general. So I think making the tie to who represents you and who else does your representation represent is an important behind the scenes one. So in that respect, it does make sense. Rich Paul does have very close relationships with a lot of important people within the Clippers organization, and obviously has a very close relationship with LeBron James himself. LeBron loves LA. That makes sense. We heard you can laugh at it all you want. I kind of laughed and giggled about it a little bit too, but his feelings are valid that when LeBron became the winningest player in NBA history, he didn't get the game ball, he was clearly upset about that. Maybe he's just over the Lakers organization. Maybe he might feel disrespected by an offer on the table that the Lakers might give him. We know that LeBron isn't going to play for $15 or $20 million a year. He wants to go where he can make money, and I don't blame him for that. So maybe there's a little bit of a revenge factor here that he's like, you don't treat me the way that I feel like I should be treated, then fine. I'm going across town and I'm playing for the Clippers. So all of those things do make sense. But there's one very important aspect in all of this, Coley, that I think wouldn't make sense. And it's like, why would he do that? Why would he go play for the Clippers?
Yes.
They don't look like they're going to be contending for anything. They don't have a history of winning. In fact, they have a much deeper history of dysfunction within the Clippers organization. They are clearly the less interesting, less lucrative franchise in the city of LA. And like your last year probably, presumably, we assume what would be LeBron's last year. You mean to tell me that you've had one of the most, if not the most legendary and historic careers in the history of the sport, and you're going to play your final year for the Clippers? That doesn't make sense.
Caroline, when I look at LeBron James, I think about him. Legacy is something that appears, again, I don't know LeBron James, but from what I've been able to perceive of him these last several years, these many years that he's played in this game, legacy is really important to him. Legacy for his family, legacy for his kids, but legacy for who he is as a basketball player. And his legacy right now has been that he has reinvented Cleveland. He brought a championship to Miami. He brought one to LA that, of course, no one really wants to talk about because that was the bubble year, but still brought a championship to all three of those teams. And this is an opportunity to do that for another team that hasn't had a championship pedigree. Of course, the Lakers and Heat certainly have had those pedigrees long before he came on the scene. But that's a chance to do that. But there's also the risk to ruining legacy by going to a place like this that just hasn't had the same level of basketball relevance and reverence, you could argue, compared to a place like Los Angeles. And even with what the Miami Heat have even meant to basketball in the last 30 or 40 years, certainly they have a more extensive legacy in the game than the Clippers have had over the years. I understand that the Clippers have been trying to reinvent themselves that way, obviously building this brand new spanking arena that, the entire basketball world has been talking about. I haven't had a chance to visit it myself yet, but I hear all the great things about the bells and whistles there. And if you had a guy like a LeBron James, now all of a sudden it looks like the Clippers could be a fun destination to go to. But that all brings us back to the point that you just said. You just brought up, why would you do this? I just can't foresee the logical reasoning behind it. And I also just, knowing what we mentioned earlier as well about the investigation that's pending around the Clippers as it is right now, I just don't understand why LeBron would potentially risk a little ding mark against his legacy, a legacy that he has so carefully manicured and tried to protect and preserve and project throughout all these years.
The aspiration of it all, I think, is a very important part of the story when it comes to would LeBron even want to go to the Clippers? Because let's just say we live in a world where the NBA comes down and says the Clippers have a 5-year postseason ban. Just randomly coming up with something. You think LeBron is going to risk that in his final season to go to a place where he would want to, I'm sure, to contend for a championship and they have a postseason ban? That would not be a dark storm cloud that I would be willing to kind of flirt with. But speaking of the aspiration of it all, because what might come from that, I do not know. I am thinking that there's probably going to be no punishment, more than I would think there's going to be a drastic punishment, but time will tell. But we did find out from a Jake Fisher report yesterday that Kawhi Leonard wants to remain with the Clippers, and he'd apparently be open to signing an extension also with the Raptors, but he would not be open to signing an extension with the Pistons or the Heat. What's your reaction to that, Coley?
I think getting away from LA is going to be a good thing for Kawhi Leonard if there is truly a path forward for him. He's had some injury issues, of course, the last few years. We haven't seen him be the contributor to a team in a real tangible way like he was early in his career. We haven't seen that in a really long time. And so I do question whether Toronto really would want to bring it back, run it back with him. Of course, he had some of his best moments in a basketball uniform were when he was with the Raptors. Probably his better moments were when he was a Spur. But I do think that a departing of this marriage, so to speak, would be in both parties' best interest because of what this entire ordeal has brought to the Clippers. You say you didn't think that a true punishment is going to come down. I think a pretty harsh punishment is going to come down because this investigation has taken so long. The last time we heard from Adam Silver about this, that was during the NBA Finals, and it seemed like then, even though he didn't give a timeline, it still just sounded like they were moving to a very quick resolution because all the interested parties had been talked to. They'd been, the investigation seemed to be getting to a point where it was going to wrap up. I'm expecting something serious from a financial standpoint. $7.5 million is the max penalty in this particular case that the league could impose. And if that's the case, then that's money that we could talk about LeBron James or anybody for all we want. That's money that the Clippers now don't have to pay a free agent or any other free agent. So I think there is going to be a pretty harsh penalty. And again, it just goes to what we're discussing here. I don't know why you'd want to put yourself in that position if you're LeBron James, but the dots, they are connected in a weird way.
They absolutely are. And let me say for the record, there should be a harsh punishment because they are so obviously guilty of the crime that they are being accused of. I just don't know if I necessarily trust the NBA to come down with the hammer that I feel like is necessary of what Steve Ballmer and the Clippers organization is so obviously guilty of. But of course, that is not going anywhere. But last night, the USMNT was on full display, but they dropped their first game of the World Cup 3-2 to Türkiye. Taylor Twellman, friend of the show, will join us coming up next to break it all down.
Possibly for one of those RPO type plays where you put it in Tomas's gut. But you see the sticky coverage on the outside, trying not to allow for easy completions.
From the 16, they send the blitz. He lofts it, corner of the end zone. What a catch against the wall. Quentin Randolph.
Problem was, this is good coverage. You just got to continue to run. Right there, you see Page kind of give up on it.
Mike Leach revolutionizes offense in the SEC with the air raid. Bob Stoops gets the Oklahoma job. He calls the guy whose offense drove him the craziest, who makes Mike Leach's offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. That works really well. Texas Tech hires Mike Leach. That changed high school football in the state of Texas. Meanwhile, you had players from Texas Tech going into the NFL saying, hey, here's what we did. He changed football at every level.
1:18 to play, third quarter, pumps once, Delora rolls. Delora calling out for his receivers, back across the field, wide open, McKee, inside the 10, Seneca McKee, angles for the end zone, touchdown, Nighthawks.
But he keeps the play alive and just finds the backside. McKee with the great finish. Phenomenal job right there by Delora.
I think Darius Acuff is by far the best point guard in this draft. I don't think it's a close second. And I think Acuff is different. Acuff can get a bucket. Acuff can pass the ball. And he has this confidence. He has this confidence it's not arrogant. It's not cocky. It's a surety in himself that you need to be successful at this level.
Türkiye shocks the United States in stoppage time to hand them its first loss of the World Cup. The USMNT had a chance to win all three group stage matches for the first time in history. I feel that broken heart emoji. But Taylor Twellman is our Yahoo Sports Soccer analyst who joins us now to break down all of the action that we saw last night at SoFi Stadium. So Taylor, should the team be frustrated at all for conceding a late winner? Or on the other side, can it take any solace about a performance that saw some of the team's less experienced players get some opportunity in what was a largely meaningless game?
Caroline, I'd actually argue both, right? Because the 98th minute to give up a goal, basically the last kick of the game, that's a bitter pill to swallow. I don't care who's playing and where the game is. That's a difficult one, especially when you fought back to tie the game. And then you did a good job in the second half when obviously the game becomes disjointed with substitutions and everything else to then get to the point where you leave with 1 point and then to give up the goal. You see Christian Pulisic get nutmegged, then bad man marking on the back post, and then all of a sudden Türkiye wins the game 3-2. So that's a tough one. And the players last night, I can promise you this, are not that leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. However, it's a great reminder of the better quality competition you will find in the knockout stage. Türkiye, which I said before the tournament started, would be the best attacking team that the United States would face in the group. They proved that. They've got young players, some playing at Real Madrid and some of the biggest clubs in the world. Now, I think Pochettino may not like the answers he got about some of the second-team players, for lack of a better way to put it, but he got answers. And so I said this all day yesterday, is that even though the result was inconsequential, the game was not meaningless because Mauricio Pochettino needs some answers to the depth of this team, who's capable of answering the call, who's ready for the situation. And I still go back to the point I've brought up now with you guys for almost 2.5 weeks. We still don't know about the back line. The back line was tested last night, wasn't the starting back line, and they weren't great. And now we're going to go into the knockout stage with the starting back line not having been tested either. And so there's still question marks for the coaching staff of whether or not they can defend and win a game in the fashion that they may need to. And now also another nice to know, the last 12 games, 12 against European competition, the United States have lost 10, tied 2.
Oof. Wow. That's
Put it
definitely
that way.
stark. Yeah. Now, the team did look better on the attack at times once Christian Pulisic was subbed in. It just seemed like they were more fluid at times throughout that second half. With the calf injury that Pulisic is dealing with, why was it so important for him to appear in this match?
It's a great question. I was in the camp, and I still am, even though we saw him, thankfully, survive the game and not get injured. But the risk outweighed the reward exponentially by playing Christian Pulisic, who has a history of having little nicks here and there. Now, Christian told everyone in the world he was 100% fit. And now once you get that from a player like him, I can understand Pochettino and the medical staff saying, let's get 20, 25 minutes from him. You saw it in the blink of an eye, 3-4 minutes in. The U.S. was more dangerous. And so right away, you know the answer to who's the most important attacking player for the United States. It's Christian Pulisic. And so getting the 20 minutes out of him, I will say this, it now takes the jitters of him returning away. He's now training leading into the Bosnia game, completely confident in his body. And so you win a lot out of that versus, in my way of saying, let's rest him, he wouldn't have played a game yet. So how were you going to get him that kind of fitness? The United States won this battle and Christian Pulisic won this battle of getting back to mental and physical fitness, and now he'll be ready to go against Bosnia.
Taylor, last night, Mauricio Pochettino was asked about what this loss might do for momentum. He did not like that question very much. He said, I don't understand, and I think that's a weird question. Okay, fair. You've been there. You've played this sport. We talk in what we do in front of microphones a lot about momentum. What do you think this game could do for momentum?
First off, I want to make this abundantly clear. I'm on Pochettino's side here. This is the first time the United States men have ever gone into a third game in a group stage not needing to win because they've already won the group. And so immediately you get the result that you get, and every question is of the dire sense. And I thought his comment was brilliant when he said, we need to think bigger. He's 100% correct on that. Because if you want to achieve bigger and better things, then you have to have nuance with your way of thinking. Now, the question about momentum, though, in particular, I do appreciate because you could ask the 9 different starting players last night, what was the most important thing they wanted to get out of the game? And that was keep the momentum, keep the string winning. Set history, winning your first 3 games of a World Cup, which the United States men have never done. And so that's where the momentum aspect comes from. But I believe, and I think that team does, and this is where the media may be getting this wrong, they believe 100% what they're doing. They know 100% that they're favored against Bosnia, and if they beat Bosnia, they know they're favored in the next game. I don't think the momentum's been lost. I don't think the momentum's been jolted, quite honestly. I think there's been a reminder that they've got to be clean. They've got to be precise collectively within their individual task in achieving those goals. So I kind of get why he's frustrated with the United States men won their group. They had a free game, so to speak, and he wanted to get answers. and yet the entire press conference is of the dire sense. Now, some of that is giving up a goal in the 98th minute. So in fairness to the media, I get that. It's a tough pill to swallow, because if they tie that game 2-2, I don't think the press conference is that way. But I understand the question about momentum. It was the follow-ups after that, Caroline, that really rubbed Mauricio Pochettino the wrong way, and I kind of lean on his side with that.
Yeah, I love that perspective myself. U.S., of course, playing Bosnia-Herzegovina in the round of 32 coming up. And Bosnia qualified for this tournament with a win over Italy, where Esmir Bayraktarovic, I hope I said Bayraktarovic the right way.
Bayraktarovic. Yep.
Bayraktarovic, I was pretty close. He had the game-winning penalty kick, of course, in that one. He was born and raised here in the States in Wisconsin, and even played for the U.S. men's national team as a youngster. You know, he played for the U.S. team growing up. Of course, his parents are both Bosnian, and now he is competing for Bosnia in this World Cup. What do you think about stories like this? How do you measure who a player should play for, or should we even care?
Well, one, you should care, but two, we can't determine to each individual around the world who he or she should play for. That's up to them. That's where their heart lies. That's where everything comes into that situation. Now, I've known Esmir since he was 16, 17 years old, and I had heard about him when he was 14 years old in Wisconsin. And there were about 3 or 4 MLS teams that desperately wanted to sign him to their academy to get into the MLS Next program and ultimately play in MLS. And right in my own backyard, the New England Revolution won that race. And he was a very promising player from the opening whistle when I saw him play for the Revolution. Now, when he was capped with the United States men, I was very, very vocal of saying I'm not completely sure he's 100% in it for that. And that wasn't a derogatory statement, but knowing his history, knowing the story of his family, I know the Bosnian ties were really big, which, by the way, the largest Bosnian community in the United States per capita is actually St. Louis, Missouri. Now, I spent majority of my life in St. Louis, Missouri, so I was a little surprised he didn't sign with St. Louis City and MLS, but I digress. The point is this, is that he's a very, very high-quality technical player, and emotionally Wednesday night in Bosnia's first knockout stage game in their World Cup history against what could have been his team and what could have been that he would have been on during this World Cup on a personal level. That's going to be a very, very interesting time for Esmir and for the Bayraktarovic family.
Like a true St. Louis native, it always comes back to St. Louis because I do it myself.
Yes. Where'd you go to high school, Caroline?
That's the classic question. I went to Parkway Central.
There you go. Perfect.
And you either went to SLU or DeSmet?
If you ever say DeSmet again, I will never do this show.
So it was SLU.
It was absolutely St. Louis U High.
we know our hometown well. I haven't lived there in over a decade, and I could still pinpoint where somebody went to high school. It's a superpower of mine. Taylor, I've heard so much about the path, maybe from people outside of the United States, of the U.S. has such a favorable path, and maybe that might, on the global path, on a global stage rather, maybe take away from the U.S. men's national team. I don't view it that way because I do view any sort of path or any sort of championship, a little bit of luck is thrown in there. Do you agree with that sentiment, though, that the U.S. has a favorable draw and that they might not see one of these big-time superstars on a path to maybe the round of 8?
Yeah, I think that's just a lack of understanding of the 48-team bracket. And so, listen, it's apparent for a lot of teams. If you win your group now with 8 third-place qualifiers, there are a lot of teams that their path becomes easier. But we're not talking about France, Spain, England, Argentina, top 4 teams ranked in the world. How's their path? If all 4 won their respective groups, all 4 don't play each other to the semifinal. Nobody's talking about that being a favorable path. So it's just, to me, it's a lack of understanding of it. Now, it's been raised, this topic's been raised because Canada, finishing second in their group, now doesn't play a game in their home country, and that's unfavorable. And I think that's a fair conversation because they are a host country. And quite frankly, I think their game should have been in their backyard, but they didn't win their group. Now, if they won their group, it would have been. So I understand the conversation, and actually the better word for this is confusion on how the brackets have played out. The U.S. got a favorable group. They won their group, but to tell me they got a favorable draw and path, they had to win their group to cement that. If they finished second or third, we're talking about a completely different situation. And it's not the United States' fault that Morocco didn't win their group, and now they've got to play the Dutch coming out of theirs. And so that's where I think it becomes a little convoluted. And quite frankly, Bosnia is not going to be an easy out. It's just a favorable path for a host nation that won their group. I just think people are really drawing straws here to try to find something to talk about.
Taylor, we always have you on to put your analyst hat on, and you do a great job of it. But I want you to put your fan hat on now, because we know that you are a massive Celtics fan. And I know that you've been living in the World Cup world, but I am sure you've seen the Jaylen Brown rumors that have been surfacing around social media. So if Brad Stevens picks up the phone and calls you, and he asks you for advice on what he should do with the Jaylen Brown situation, what are you telling Brad Stevens?
Well, he would have needed to call me a week after they lost to the 76ers. And here's what I would have said. I don't think it's a Jaylen Brown problem, and I don't think it's a Jason Tatum problem. If your coach fails that team 3 out of the 4 years, I get it in the other year, but look at the other 3 outs of the Celtics in the playoffs. They were debacles. So all I would raise the question of, is it those two playing together a problem, or is it a style problem? Is it a tactic problem? This is the soccer analyst still coming to this. I don't know if I'm trading a top 8, 9 player in the league and not look at maybe the style doesn't suit the team that we have. They live and die by the threes, and it is ridiculous for the 2 players that they have. You shouldn't. Jaylen Brown is really good at going to the rim. Stop shooting threes. You had a 3-1 series lead against the Sixers. You had a 12-point lead in the third quarter of Game 5. They didn't lose because Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum can't play together. Miss me with that. However, this is my problem. Now, this is the athlete. Less than 24 hours of blowing that series lead, you want to go on social media and tell the world that that was the best season on your behalf on a personal level. As a teammate, I'm out. Done. And that's where Brad Stevens is right now. And that is where the whole staff is, and that is where the players are. Now, Jason Tatum is really close with Jaylen Brown. And any narrative out there that you hear, that's factually wrong, okay? But if Jaylen Brown now wants his own team, Jason Tatum can't open his mouth and say, don't trade him, because he's like, listen, time is there. But 24 hours after you blow that lead, you want to tell the world this was the best season you've ever had? Guys, Jaylen, what were you trying to accomplish there?
Especially when you've won a championship.
Yes. That wasn't fun. Like, if your significant other goes on a solo vacation and says that was the best vacation I've ever had, I don't think you'd feel very good about that.
Nope.
I think it's crazy to look into what Jaylen Brown said there. I mean, what can't he do? He's a soccer analyst. He's a basketball GM, or at least he could be. Taylor Twellman, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you as always, and we'll see you next week.
I can't coach the Celtics. Brad Stevens, I cannot coach the Celtics. No, I'm out. See you guys.
Appreciate you, Taylor. Taylor Twellman joins us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday throughout the World Cup, always breaking it down in layman's terms for us. But coming up next are the Blazers on the move.
Do you have any advice that you could give to Christian Pulisic about how to handle this World Cup?
I think if he can find a zone where he is like that kid again, that is on the field with his buddies, and these are his buddies, this national team, these guys are close, and just understand not overthink the opportunity and the pressure and the home World Cup, but be like, what a privilege it is for us to be on this field right now representing the United States.
He's gotta lock it in.
Right here, under 8, down by 3. It's one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league. Fired, caught, open space in front. Karan Ashley still on his feet inside the 5, touchdown! This is again why we love the indoor football league.
I'll take it as a miss because it didn't work. But I still think this guy has the potential to become a star in this league. I was super on the train of draft Jonathan Kuminga. And so I'd have to say that that's my miss, but not miss from the standpoint of Killian Hayes type of miss. Miss from the standpoint of ultimately it didn't work. And now he's trying to and will figure it out, I think, in Atlanta.
We'll see how things go. And this is the kickoff here by Kevin Macias, who was a sugar skull until 2 weeks ago. And the return up to the races, Aaron Jackson. Touchdown, Sugar Skulls returning the opening kickoff.
This is outstanding. And you know what's funny? So I was downstairs, and Mr. Jackson came up to me. He was like, hey, man, I appreciate you saying good things about me. I was like, look, if you make plays, I'm going to say good things. So if you want me to keep saying great things about you, keep making plays.
Pistons head coach JB Bickerstaff called out the unconventional, that's a nice way to put it, structure of Micah Norrie's contract with the Trailblazers. Norrie's deal with Portland includes only one guaranteed year, with team options on the second and third years of the deal. That is the latest. JB Bickerstaff calling it a slap in the face to our value. It is very strange, Coley. I have never seen a coaching contract look quite like that. But is JB Bickerstaff right? Is Blazers' new owner, Tom Dundon, also known as El Cheapo, taking advantage of a guy in Micah Norrie, who is a very well-respected, well-known assistant coach throughout the NBA and has been for a very long time? But is he taking advantage of Micah Norrie looking for his first NBA head coaching job?
Oh, 100% he is. And I mean, when the one thing I know about JB Bickerstaff is that he really stands behind the people that he cares about. He stands behind his players and will talk out about them and for them. And he stands up for other coaches in the league, whether they're his coaches or not. And of course, that's also part of his role as the president of the Coaches Association. When he comes out and uses that language, a slap in the face to our value, I mean, that is pointed language, that is targeted, that is firm, that is bold. And it's unequivocal. And I think he's absolutely right that it does diminish the value of what coaches are. I mean, we just talked about Joe Mazzulla and the Celtics with Taylor Twellman. And Mazzulla's been there for enough time to really grow that franchise, to turn that franchise into a winner, which they do have the one championship year, as we were just mentioning. But in this scenario, Micah Norrie is basically being told, hey, we know that we have the blueprint in place for a team to be somewhat successful, but now we want you to turn that somewhat successful team in a year, essentially, into a winner. You've got to contend with the likes of OKC and San Antonio tomorrow. It's just not going to happen in Portland. They don't have the structure to do that just yet. Deni Advia is certainly a key piece within that system, and they've played well. This was a team that, of course, was right there in that play-in scenario this past season, and there could be more on the table. But with a new coaching staff and a new ownership group and a new everything, it's going to take a little bit of a minute for this team to turn into something special. It's going to take much longer than a year, I can assure you that. But this does, in fact, feel like Tom Dundon is trying to take advantage of the fact that he's got a coach in Micah Norrie who just hasn't had an opportunity as a head coach just yet. And here he is. He has this chance. I know Norrie came out just yesterday and he said, look, I'm not paying attention to anybody that questions my contract and my contract situation. I'm here for a job and I'm here to win, and that's all I'm focusing on. And that's all well and good. It's great to say that publicly, but you do have to wonder, what was it that he was sold on? I mean, this is also a team that might not be playing in Portland in the next 2 or 3 years, if indeed he's able to get that team option on years 2 and 3. It just feels like it is overly team friendly, and it really puts coaches at risk of setting up a precedent that other owners could do the same thing somewhere down the line.
I mean, if the question is Tom Dundon taking advantage of Mike Nori getting his first opportunity as a head coach in the NBA? The answer is unequivocally yes, because why else would he sign that deal? It's because he knows this is one of 30 opportunities in the NBA, that he's been in the NBA space for decades, and he hasn't gotten his opportunity. This is his one. Why else would he take a total and complete raw deal? 1 year guaranteed, and then his fate is totally and completely in the hands of Tom Dundon for the next 2 years. It's totally unfair to Mike Nori, because let's be fair, how many coaches actually win in their first years? Is there a detailed report and breakdown of what is good enough in his first year to warrant a second contract, warrant a second year of the contract, and then a third year of the contract? I would hope so. For Mike Nori's protection, I would hope that there is here's our threshold. If you meet it, you get another year. And if you don't, then sorry, you got to go home. But even that is wildly unfair. So that is totally Tom Dundon taking advantage of Mike Nori. And I think it is totally and completely unfair to Mike Nori. But that is not the only Tom Dundon news that is in the headlines, which is kind of strange, talking so negatively about Tom Dundon on the heels of him winning a Stanley Cup. Of course, he's the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes as well, but he owns the Portland Trailblazers, and he wants taxpayers to foot the bill entirely for the Blazers arena renovations. About $600 million estimated to be the cost of those renovations, according to Front Office Sports that you see here. How should Portland fans, Portland residents feel about this, Coley?
Oh, they should be so fed up. And in fact, they are. I know on Wednesday of this week, there was kind of a forum that was going on at the Moda Center, coincidentally enough, involving some city leaders, some politicians in Portland, and Dundon himself actually participated and spoke about what he's trying to bring to Portland and to the Trailblazers. And rightfully, there were people outside and inside the venue who were protesting because they feel this is wrong. First of all, a lot of people in Portland are wondering, where is this $600 million price tag coming from? Who exactly is saying that the Moda Center needs $600 million worth of renovations? The other part of that is Dundon is saying the taxpayers have to foot the entire bill. I understand needing public interest in terms of paying some of these stadiums off, in terms of some portion of the renovation project for what is the currently oldest arena without a renovation project in the NBA. I understand that need for the public to participate, but Dundon is valued at more than $2 billion. He's valued at $2.3 billion as of last month. If he's got that money, and if he has participated in this ownership group of buying the Portland Trailblazers, which he did just last August, almost a year ago, why exactly can he not foot some portion of that $600 million price tag that, again, we have no idea where this figure actually comes from? That's what really upsets me about this situation. And if I'm really in any sporting fan in any city where this is happening with an owner who says, hey, the taxpayers have to pay this entire freight, it just doesn't make sense. If you buy a team, and especially if you don't live in that city, you're not part of that community, why do you get to dictate to people what exactly they're going to be on the hook for, especially when that price tag is that exorbitant? You've got the money yourself. You fit the bill if you want to own this team and you want to be part of it, part of the community that way. All of this to say, the Montreal Expos certainly fans there. Montreal has been in this situation, and they will tell you that it does not end well. What it all feels like to me is actually a ploy at the end of the day to try to move the Trailblazers to one of these expansion cities that we're probably going to see come in the NBA at some point here fairly soon. And that's just unfair to the Northwest, which is a great basketball hub, particularly Portland. It's just really unfair that would happen to the taxpayers there, specifically when they don't feel like they're justified to be on the hook for $600 million that they don't know where all that money exactly is going to go into in terms of the renovations.
And I think that's the most unfortunate part of all of this. It's unfortunate that taxpayers may have to foot the bill when the billionaire is sitting there with enough money to renovate the arena. And I do understand that the state owns the arena. So you would think in some way, some form or fashion that the state and the residents would be on the hook to renovate something that they own. I do get that. But let's just say the billionaire in the building should be able to afford at least a portion of the multi-million-dollar renovations. But the most unfortunate part of it to me is that Tom Dundon has all of the leverage here. That Tom Dundon can say, you're not going to pay for it, then I'm moving the team. And that is really unfortunate for all Portland Trailblazers fan and for the city of Portland. Of course, the story is not going anywhere, but we're going to switch our attention to the Diamond. The NL Central is heating up. It is deep. It is competitive. Dani Wexelman, who is a genius, an expert on all things MLB, will join us coming up next.
There was a big bright light shining on the hall, and I saw these two figures, and they were coming. I couldn't see who they were. It was just like dark, shadowy figures. And then we walked past them. I was just talking to Jeff, and they were talking about before we started signing about how it goes. And then grabbed me from behind. He's like, hey, he says, you're not even going to say hello to me? You're doing that? And it was Taker. I said, I had no idea it was you, but that's so cool. It's so good to see you, man. I gave him a hug, and I said, man, I got to tell you, I said, I'm super excited for you, man. Are you excited for Dave Meltzer to give you the Booker of the Year award? And he said, shut up,
Myles Garrett traded to the Rams. They're trying to live in two worlds where they've got an eye on the future with the quarterback they took this year, but also clearly, maybe more than any other team we've seen, trying to push here for a Super Bowl, which God, the burden of expectations is going to be tough on that team this year. Like it is, sometimes I kind of roll my eyes at the Super Bowl or bust idea, but this really is like, that's it. Like Super Bowl or bust. Everything else it would be a failure of a season.
Got to get a touchdown on this possession. Stepping up Garrett. Garrett surveying. He wants it all. End zone Flavors is there. But it's pulled away by Cook. Cook pulled it out of the air and out of the hands of Flavors for a Northern Arizona touchdown.
That just happened. In my mind, I'm thinking INT, ball game's over. Marlon Cook says, give me this. I need it.
I grew up in Colombia, so soccer was our life. We grew up watching it, during the weekends. We all would go to the stadium, whatever. When I moved to the United States, I kind of lost that, passion for it. But I wait for the World Cup, and then I'm back. You remember what happened in '94?
Oh, I remember. I didn't know if you were going to bring it up, but I remember. Yeah, the U.S. obviously
I'm not going to bring it up. I'm just saying.
Nobody brought it up. Nobody brought it up.
We're not even talking.
Some breaking news in MLB world today. The New York Mets have fired manager Carlos Mendoza. The team announced the Mets have a 34-47 record this season, marking the second worst record in the National League. And now we welcome in Dani Wexelman, Cardinal sideline reporter and expert, as I said, on all things Major League Baseball. Dani, it felt like it was when and not if Carlos Mendoza was relieved of his duties in Queens. What is your reaction to the news?
Oh my gosh. I mean, number one, I think Carlos Mendoza is a very good manager. So let me start with that. This isn't a Carlos Mendoza problem. This is a New York Mets problem. This is an organizational problem. You could take it back before COVID when you had Mickey Callaway running the team, which honestly blows my mind that ever happened and that era existed at all. And then you can see that they had 3 different managers over the course of 6 years. That's not a Mendy problem. Again, so obviously the New York Mets struggling mightily this season. You don't have your two superstars on the field at the same time. And so when organizations go through something like this, like we saw with the Red Sox and we saw with the Phillies, you're not going to let go of your general manager or your president of baseball operations. Unfortunately, the manager is the one who will always be the guy who's let go. He is the one who's responsible, whether or not it is actually inside that clubhouse and he's lost it or anything else. He's the one who's going to be let go. And what's so fascinating always in this time is you have two ideas and two principles. He doesn't hold a bat and he doesn't hold a glove. So how could this be his problem? But he is in charge of that clubhouse. He is in charge of bullpen management and of lineup and roster construction on the field that day. Now, the real issue, guys, is what happened in the offseason and the actual roster construction that David Stearns put together. And I think, like, for me, the number one domino was trading Brandon Nimmo and bringing in Marcus Semien to play second base. I think that completely ruined any opportunity to actually roster a team that could function at a high level, having guys playing their natural positions. So here we are, and the New York Mets they're not even in the basement. They're underground right now. They're 6 feet under, and they're not coming back out this season. And so they decide to make this change. Unfortunately, Carlos Mendoza is a guy who will sit at the podium and answer your questions transparently and give honest answers to the best of his ability. He used the word embarrassed. I think it was yesterday or the other day about their performance. And I think that ultimately, I think that the Mets decide that they think this is going to make a change. It's not, but they think that it will.
Yeah, it is a pure embarrassment all the way around. Dani, where do you think that the Mets could go from here?
Oh, what a question. So Andy Green is going to come down from the front office. Andy Green has managerial experience. He was with the San Diego Padres. He's been in a ton of different roles. What I do like about Andy Green having been in the front office, because this is similar to what Skip Schumacher did with the Texas Rangers, and you've seen Chaim Bloom do it with the St. Louis Cardinals, is that you have a really great grasp of what's going on within the organization and your weaknesses and your strengths. Although there aren't many right now for the Mets, I will say that him being in that position, Andy Green can come down. And here's the thing, is that at this point, there's no pressure, right? You know that your season has been abysmal. It has been embarrassing. All you have to do is go in and just try to get the most out of your players. And you already know the coaching staff. You already understand what's going on. So it's not easy by any means, but I do think, the right guy for the moment to come in and do that. I mean, listen, they brought in Kai Correa as the bench coach. Many were wondering if eventually he would get a managerial job one day. I think there are other great managers that are out there that could come through, but I think, again, like, I think about the Mets organization and the way that they've decided to run it for the past few years. When they brought in David Stearns, I loved the move. He was a Mets fan growing up. He made the Milwaukee Brewers very successful, but that hasn't translated. He's been, I think, a bit gun shy and too hesitant for a market like this. So the construction of their roster, there were mistakes that were made. And I would love for them to go back and fix them, but here they are, and they've got to deal with them now. So I think that anyone would love a job like this. Anyone will take this job. You've got young, hungry guys out there who are bench coaches and guys who are on staffs who would love this opportunity. I mean, there are plenty I can think of. I'm not going to throw names out because I don't have anything to back that up, but it would be an incredible opportunity, but such a tall task for anyone coming in to manage this team.
Tall task indeed, and high expectations, and rightfully so, with the amount of money they've invested into that roster, that passionate fan base. Mets fans deserve
Can I add
better.
to that? They do. Can I add to that really quick? Just one quick note, because when Steve Cohen took over this team in COVID, he said that they will win a championship in 5 years. That's what Steve Cohen had promised to his fan base. And yes, he's invested millions upon millions. I think it's probably up to $1 billion at this point with the Juan Soto contract. But that's why you don't do things like that. And that's why you develop in your farm system and you draft well and you take those guys and then you bring them up. You cannot buy a championship unless you are the Los Angeles Dodgers.
They seem to be the one exception to a lot of things in the baseball world. But I want to go from the NL East to the NL Central. Jacob Misiorowski has been absolutely red hot for the Milwaukee Brewers. I mean, his speed, his velocity, just that how many pitches he can throw at over 100 miles an hour. Where would he rank amongst some of the best, most dynamic young star pitchers that you've seen?
I think that you could actually just look at the history of our sport and you could say that he's top 10, top 5. If you're thinking about young dynamic pitchers, he is a bit of a unicorn. While he is not Shohei Ohtani, his ability, to your point, Caroline, to sustain velocity, to pitch deep into games, to make everybody look really silly is unmatched. And it's unheard of, especially when you're hitting triple digits and you're maintaining something like that. That is so rare to see in our game today. I welcome the idea that he can pitch deep into games and he has different pitches to mix things up. And he's so young, right? Like, we don't even know what the sky is for this kid because he's so young still. And this is just scratching the surface of what he'll be capable of once he learns other pitches and other grips and he adds those into his arsenal. Like, this is going to be a guy who can contend for the Cy Young Award multiple times. Who knows? Maybe there's an MVP in his future. But the fact that he wants to take the ball and go deep into games, and he has, it's so interesting, right? Like, he wasn't a 1-1 guy. There were plenty of teams that passed on him in his draft class. And so for the Milwaukee Brewers to identify a kid out of Missouri, I think he went to Crowder Community College. I believe it was a community college. Correct me if I'm wrong. But for him to take a path like that and have been passed up by a lot of different teams, the Brewers, this is what they do really well. And he is, if he can stay healthy, guys, like, good luck beating him. It's really tough to game plan against him, and to get a hit, scratch a run is extremely difficult. He's a gem for the Brewers. It's awesome.
You mentioned the fact that he could be winning an NL Cy Young Award at some point in time. Well, he's certainly in a Cy Young race right now that's shaping up to be one of the best that we've seen in a long time. In addition to the Miz, you got Christopher Sanchez in Philadelphia, Shohei Ohtani, of course, having a great year, Chris Sale, Chase Burns, they're all in the mix. Who's your current leader in the clubhouse for that? Is it Misiorowski or is it another one of those pitchers?
Yeah, I think he and Christopher Sanchez right now are probably my top 2 favorites for that award. But I think that Jacob Misiorowski is a clear-cut favorite right now. How do you root against a guy who's doing what he's doing? So not only, right, does he have the strikeout percentage and his ERA is there, but he's giving his team length. So think about some intangible things that a guy does. And when Cy Young voters look at those stat lines, they may not look at that, but how important it is for me, it's 10 out of 10 because you're saving your bullpen. You're giving your guys a rest, right? You're giving your team a chance to win games. Nobody cares about win-loss record. I do. I care about it. It tells me about the character and the heart of the player that I have on my team. And when I get to October, I know exactly what that guy's going to give me and how far I can push him and what his buttons are and what he's made of. So yeah, for me, it's Jacob Misiorowski. He is the clear-cut favorite. And what I love too, Paul Skeens was trying to defend that Cy Young from last year, but I like parity in the league, guys. I like other people who can shine, and I like a competition. And clearly, Jacob Misiorowski is winning the competition right now.
Yeah, sticking with that competition a little bit. Christopher Sanchez, of course, being in Philadelphia, the All-Star game being there in just a couple of weeks. Who do we think is going to end up being the All-Star game starter? Is it going to be Sanchez just because the game is in Philadelphia? Could it be Misiorowski or even Ohtani, who, of course, is already listed as a starter now for the game after getting the highest vote total yesterday?
The vote totals were crazy, guys. I think that Canada and then the state of Los Angeles were ready to vote. I think Philly got involved too, but I think the entire NL team is a 3-city team. I think Christopher Sanchez, being the hometown guy, has a really excellent chance. Dave Roberts is the manager for the National League because he won the World Series, so he'll get a chance to do that. And don't forget, Don Mattingly will be a part of his staff. Ollie Marmol also named as a part of his coaching staff for the All-Star game. So I do think the odds are in his favor because he has his manager, because it is his home city. And listen, Jacob Misiorowski making the All-Star game last year was a really big deal. He earned that. Guys dropped out, and so he was available, and he earned that spot. We talked about that. A lot of people had something to say about it, but who's going to say no to being an all-star? Nobody's ever going to say no to that. So I think that, if this was in Milwaukee or maybe anywhere but Philly, you could see Jacob Misiorowski starting that game, but that's what makes All-Star games special. Like, the Phillies should have their guy starting that game. No one would fault them for doing that, and he has earned that spot.
And if you do want to go to the Midsummer Classic and don't have tickets quite yet, you can find them on the Game Time app by using the promo code YSDaily. Dani, you mentioned Paul Skeens, and it is so funny to hear some of the rhetoric surrounding Paul Skeens, because people might say, "Oh, he's declining this season." It's like he still has a 1.4 ERA. Like, let's all pump the brakes here when the bar is just so high. For Paul Skeens, he's still having a great season, but dare I say he could even be a better actor than he is a pitcher if we've seen him in the big Glizzy commercial.
This is so good. I love that you took this avenue. This makes me so happy. Listen, Paul Skeens is a man of few words. I think that if you listen to his interviews at any point in his life, he's not out there boasting and trying to make a lot out of nothing, right? He wants to show you who he is on the field with the way that he plays. The fact that he was able to be in the Sheets commercial and was doing something that probably was out of his comfort zone, or maybe he thought it was awesome. I don't know. I'm going to have to ask him next time I see the Pirates, but I love it. I'm obsessed with it. When you see NBA players and NFL players doing things like this all the time. Baseball is always the last to get publicity like this and get moments like this and viral moments like this. So for Paul Skeens, whoever set this up, I'm guessing his agent, I'm guessing Sheets was interested, local delicacy, and they made it work. And it's genius. It's pure genius. Obviously, there's acting in their sweet family right now. His girlfriend, Livy Dunn, acting in Baywatch. So I think that it's really cool. And I'll just on the back end of the performance conversation for Paul Skeens, like he has looked human this year. How dare Paul Skeens look human after winning a Rookie of the Year in the NL Cy Young last year, on his way to eventually probably the Hall of Fame. So he's looking a little human. It's good for Paul Skeens. It's good for him to face adversities that will fuel him to be even better. And listen, I think that the biggest question for me is like, where is Paul Skeens in 5 years, 6 years when he becomes a free agent? Do the Pirates trade him before then? Like, that's really what I think about, is like, where will Paul Skeens finish his career?
And that's a great question, because I do not blame Paul Skeens if he feels a certain level of frustration of like, look, I'm giving up 1 run and striking out 10 and we still lose. Like I do understand if he has some frustration with the organization. I do want to ask you before we let you go, we got the latest development in the CBA back and forth between the Players Association and the league, this time with MLB releasing their counter offer. So they are essentially saying, we want a salary cap and we want a salary floor. That is what the owners want. Does it feel like we are heading toward a lockout with the latest that we've heard?
That's $1 million question. I think it feels like what we're heading towards is a lot of communication. I think that I can't sit here and say that that's going to be the case. I think the past few years, obviously, in the last one, we did see a lockout. I think inevitably there's such big action items on the table that require time. And so I don't really think it's actually the lockout per se that is my biggest issue. I think that it's, does the league miss games? And I can't say that the rhetoric that we're hearing right now and the conversations that are happening are leading towards that, because ultimately I don't think anybody wants to miss games. I don't think either side wants that. That means money lost. That means you're losing the momentum of the sport that you have worked so incredibly hard to build back up. Dare I say, Tarps Off has been a part of building that momentum back, and fans going to the park. And it's not just, teenagers, it's young kids, it's older fans, it's people that are going to weddings, it's other sports gravitating towards this phenomenon of people taking their shirts off and being part of a group that loves a sport. And so to answer your question, I think that inevitably, we're going to get to December 1st, and it will be tough for me to envision a spot where both sides have come to an agreement. How close is December? How many months away? What is it? It's the end of June.
6.
So we're 6 months. I think that would be really tough, but I think I want to take the optimistic route, guys, and say that the conversations are happening. The back and forth is happening. I think that both sides want to come to an agreement, and they don't want to miss games. Not one person that I know who works in baseball, plays baseball, or watches baseball wants games to be missed. And so my hope is that because these conversations are happening and they're happening more frequently, that it does mean that a resolution will happen at least before games will be missed.
I'm with you. I'm going to believe in the power of tarps off and where
Yeah.
that could get us in this CBA because it's sweeping the nation. You can find her on Cardinals broadcast. She's on SNY, Sirius XM. She is everywhere. Dani Wexelman, thank you so much for stopping by and giving us all of your genius. We'll catch up with you soon.
You're the best. Thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome. Absolutely appreciate it. Dani Wexelman, friend of the show. But coming up next, Dani talks about the future of Paul Skeens in Pittsburgh. What about the future of Ja Morant in Memphis?
Possibly for one of those RPO type plays where you put it in Tomas's gut. But you see the sticky coverage on the outside, trying not to allow for easy completions.
From the 16. They send the blitz. He lofts it. Corner of the end zone. What a catch against the wall. Quentin Randolph.
Problem was, this is good coverage. You just got to continue to run. Right there, you see Page kind of give up on it.
Mike Leach revolutionizes offense in the SEC with the air raid. Bob Stoops gets the Oklahoma job. He calls the guy whose offense drove him the craziest, who makes Mike Leach's offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. That works really well. Texas Tech hires Mike Leach. That changed high school football in the state of Texas. Meanwhile, you had players from Texas Tech going into the NFL saying, hey, here's what we did. He changed football at every level.
1:18 to play, third quarter, pumps once, Delora rolls. Delora calling out for his receivers, back across the field, wide open, McKee, inside the 10, Seneca McKee, angles for the end zone, touchdown, Nighthawks.
But he keeps the play alive and just finds the backside. McKee with the great finish. Phenomenal job right there by Delora.
I think Darius Acuff is by far the best point guard in this draft. I don't think it's a close second. And I think Acuff is different. Acuff can get a bucket. Acuff can pass the ball. And he has this confidence. He has this confidence it's not arrogant. It's not cocky. It's a surety in himself that you need to be successful at this level.
I just have a random question for y'all. This or that. Would you rather have De'Aaron Fox or Ja Morant?
Whoa. De'Aaron Fox.
De'Aaron Fox. Ja Morant.
Ooh.
Give me Ja.
Ooh. Go first. Defend Ja first.
I want to swing. I think with Ja Morant, I don't think
I want to swing.
I want to swing.
Drama. He wants drama.
I want to swing. Fox is fine. He's a fine point guard.
Mm-hmm.
Ja Morant has a chance to be an all-star when he gets back on the floor and he's back healthy. There's no all-star upside with De'Aaron Fox. We've seen him past his peak, in my opinion.
That was just a tidbit of our fabulous NBA Draft Night live coverage. KOC, Ice Young, King McClure, Tom Haberstroh. And to clarify, look, KOC does know that De'Aaron Fox made the All-Star team this year, but that wasn't his main point necessarily. His main point was Ja Morant has a higher ceiling and a higher upside than De'Aaron Fox. But it's a great question that Ice Young posed there, and probably a question that some people in Memphis are asking themselves. Coley, what do you think? Would you rather have Ja Morant or De'Aaron Fox?
First of all, we talk about ceiling and upside with Morant or Fox. The difference in age of them is 3 years. It feels as if De'Aaron Fox has been in the league way longer than Ja Morant. It feels like he's way older. It feels like he's so much more of a veteran. And I guess that's because he was the quote unquote old guy of the Spurs this past year. But they're almost the same age. They're almost getting to be about the same spot of their career. Certainly De'Aaron having those extra, 2 or 3 years of life experience will pay off in a slightly different way. And I think that's also even why maybe we perceive them in different ways, because there are still some things from a maturing standpoint that Ja Morant has still been kind of negotiating with himself. But give me De'Aaron Fox all day. The main reason why I say give me Fox is because we know who he is. Granted, he did not have a very good showing in the NBA Finals. We know about going up for the layup when he should have held onto the ball and dribbled the clock out in game 3, I believe it was. We know that he kept taking threes at times when he should have just settled for a mid-range J because he was doing such a great job with the mid-range Js all series. We know that he should have dumped the ball off to Vassell or Stefan Castle or somebody else. Let somebody else shoot at times in the NBA Finals. Yes, that was a problem. Howsoever, he got the Spurs to the NBA Finals. That's something that Ja Morant has not done with a team that he's been part of yet. And again, that is because, he hasn't had the pieces around him for that kind of championship run in Memphis. That's part of it. It's also that Ja has been injured, and Ja has had some other issues on and off the court that have contributed to some of that as well. But when I take the full body of work of both of those players, I just know what I'm going to get out of De'Aaron Fox. I know what he can provide me as a veteran, as a scorer, as a distributor. I know what he can provide me as a defender. Give me him for right now, just because there is still this mystique. There are still these question marks about what Ja Morant can possibly be, and maybe that speaks to the upside that KOC was just mentioning right there, the potential that he still possesses. But I just also, at this point of Ja Morant's career, I feel like some of this should be certain. We should know what we're getting out of him on the floor. We should know what he can do in terms of leading a team, and it's just he hasn't been able to do it just yet. De'Aaron Fox has.
Yeah. And I totally understand where KOC is coming from. And let me say for the record, KOC has more NBA knowledge in his pinky than I will ever have. So I will defer to him. And I think it makes sense coming off of the NBA Finals. I mean, Knicks fans were printing De'Aaron Fox Knicks jerseys for crying out loud. Like, that's how bad De'Aaron Fox was at times in the NBA Finals. That's how puzzling some of the decisions that he made were in late game situations. So I do understand that. With that being our most recent memory of De'Aaron Fox was totally tinkling in his pants in the NBA Finals, you would say, no, I don't want him. Give me the other guy. But I know what I can get from De'Aaron Fox, right? We know what to expect from him. I know that if it's a late game situation in a big time game, the ball is not going in De'Aaron Fox's hands. I also know, or at least I feel really good, that De'Aaron Fox is not going to be a distraction off the court. I know that De'Aaron Fox has a certain level of maturity and a certain decorum that he carries himself with, that I don't have to worry about him getting suspended or getting into legal trouble or, being a distraction to the rest of the locker room. In fact, that's the big reason why the Spurs brought De'Aaron Fox in to begin with. They wanted a veteran leader in the locker room that could be kind of a moral compass, that could be a guy that has that postseason experience. Now, it didn't necessarily come to fruition in the finals, but that's the confidence that the Spurs had in the person and the player that De'Aaron Fox is. I don't know what I'm getting from Ja Morant. I don't know. The injuries, of course, are a question mark, but the behavior, the legal troubles that Ja Morant has gotten into, he's too much of a wild card on or off the court, in my opinion. So while I can't trust De'Aaron Fox based off of the finals performance that he just had in late game situations, I can't trust Ja Morant off the court. And I'll take a guy that I can trust off the court over a guy that I can't. But with that being said, look, Ja Morant is a Grizzly for now. Where he is in the future, I do not know the answer to that question. But the Grizzlies did trade back a couple of spots in the first round. They ended up taking Kareem Lopez, acquired a bunch of second-round picks in the process. We were debating yesterday off air about what Ja Morant's trade value is, and does he have a negative trade value at this point? Wherever he is traded to, do you have to sweeten the pot a little bit with some picks, with some money, whatever it might be? Do you think the Grizzlies' plan was collect a mess of these second-round picks to sweeten the pot a little bit in a potential Ja Morant trade deal?
It certainly feels like it. I think that at this point, you're not going to get a ton of value back in terms of a 1-for-1 trade, in part because it sort of feels like every team that kind of needs a guard of Ja Morant's caliber kind of just addressed that in the draft, and they've been they're preparing to make other moves in free agency that would probably steer in that direction. It doesn't feel as if he's it kind of feels like he's going to be just on the outside looking in that regard. So if you are a team that says, you know what, we're desperate enough, we believe there's value in this player, we want to take this player on, but Memphis, you're going to have to give us a whole lot in return. That's where the draft picks would come into play. And I don't know if maybe this is Memphis saying, hey, we're going to stockpile these picks for this offseason. I know Brian Windhorst is reporting that Memphis is trying to depart with Ja Morant during this offseason. But it also feels like, hey, if something doesn't work out this offseason, then this would help down the line. You know, these are draft picks that you could still apply to a potential trade going into the next offseason, because Morant is still currently under contract for the next 2 years. And I mean, he's slated to make about $90 million here in the next 2 years from Memphis. So there's also that. There's the salary that the Grizzlies would be shedding, and there's the potential of trying to reset themselves and move on now that they had the number 3 pick in the draft. They drafted a player in Cameron Boozer, who it feels like, at least from the outside looking in right now, it feels like they want to build around him and maybe not build around Ja Morant anymore.
Yeah, it just feels like it's run its course. And we saw that report there from Brian Windhorst, who said I don't think he'll play in a Grizzlies jersey again. It just feels like Memphis is ready to start fresh. Not rip it down to the studs and totally tank and be terrible,
right,
but start fresh. Allow Cam Boozer a clean and fresh slate to start his NBA career. No distractions, in terms of the media. No distractions in terms of the conversation of the future of Ja Morant. No distractions at all. Just allow him to come in and start to build his foundation of what I believe is he can be the foundation of this team moving forward. Just cut your losses with Ja Morant. It didn't work out, unfortunately. And maybe there is a team out there that is desperate enough to win right now that feels like, hey, we can work with this. Like we can fix Ja Morant. We can put him in a position both on and off the court to succeed. I think that's the Grizzlies' best path moving forward. But coming up next into the MNBA to the WNBA, a record night for Marina Mabrey. Will break down what went down for the Toronto Tempo last night.
You have any advice that you could give to Christian Pulisic about how to handle this World Cup?
I think if he can find a zone where he is like that kid again that is on the field with his buddies, and these are his buddies, this national team, these guys are close, and just understand not overthink the opportunity and the pressure and the home World Cup, but be like, what a privilege it is for us to be on this field right now representing the United States.
He's gotta lock it in.
Right here, under 8, down by 3. It's one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league. Fired, caught, open space in front. Karan Ashley still on his feet inside the 5, touchdown! This is again why we love the indoor football league.
I'll take it as a miss because it didn't work. But I still think this guy has the potential to become a star in this league. I was super on the train of draft Jonathan Kuminga. And so I'd have to say that that's my miss, but not miss from the standpoint of Killian Hayes type of miss. Miss from the standpoint of ultimately it didn't work. And now he's trying to and will figure it out, I think, in Atlanta.
We'll see how things go. And this is the kickoff here by Kevin Macias, who was a sugar skull until 2 weeks ago. And the return up to the races, Aaron Jackson. Touchdown, Sugar Skulls returning the opening kickoff.
This is outstanding. And you know what's funny? So I was downstairs, and Mr. Jackson came up to me. He was like, hey, man, I appreciate you saying good things about me. I was like, look, if you make plays, I'm going to say good things. So if you want me to keep saying great things about you, keep making plays.
All caps, Marina Mabrey ties the WNBA record for the most points in a single game with 50 53. That's right, 53 points last night against the LA Sparks, one of the all-time performances in W history. Last night, Marina Mabrey against the Sparks, she was 9 of 18 from beyond the arc. She was 60% from the field, Coley. Marina Mabrey could not be stopped. I mean, what do you make of Marina Mabrey, not just doing this period, but doing this for the Toronto Tempo and expansion team in the WNBA?
Well, first of all, Marina Mabrey, I mean, she's been doing this for a long time. This isn't just a new phenomenon, but she's also been getting really hot of late. It feels like we've been waiting for this kind of performance for the last couple of weeks. Just last week, a week ago today, last Friday, she hit 9 threes in a game, and that tied a WNBA record for made threes in a single game. And guess what she did last night? She hit 9 threes again in a game, tying the same WNBA single game record that she did just barely a week ago. So this was not a fluke. This was not her, getting Bam Adebayo'd and going to the free throw line time and time again and just getting points that way. This was her knocking down a bunch of long range threes, driving into the paint, getting some scores that way as well. But it's huge for the WNBA to have these kinds of storylines, to hear this kind of news. And it's even bigger for a team like the Toronto Tempo that's brand new, that's fresh, that actually seems to be playing some pretty good ball, has a really good couple of players and a really good scorer and shooter in Mabrey. I think when we talk about expansion and we talk about bringing the WNBA to new cities, and especially cities like Toronto, where we don't necessarily always associate basketball coming from there. Now, there are a lot of good basketball players who come from Toronto, but aside from the Raptors, it just doesn't feel like, oh, this is a hotbed of basketball, of the bastions of basketball. We always associate that with New York and Chicago, LA, Atlanta, and places like that. So for a city that is also trying to grow the sport in a certain way that way, that this is important. This is a chance to really prove just how successful the team there can be and what the franchise can be in that city. The 53 points is unreal. Liz Cambage was the first to score 53 points. The second to score 53 points in WNBA history was A'ja Wilson. Those are the only two players who've scored as many points as Marina Mabrey scored last night. That is incredible. So a massive achievement for her, and I really do hope that the league celebrates this the way that it ought to be.
Pretty good company to be in with Liz Cambage and A'ja Wilson. Now Marina Mabrey joins very rarefied air. And it did kind of feel like this was coming. She just had a 37-point performance. She's been averaging more than 20 points a game. So Marina Mabrey has had a career year. And I think that's one really positive thing of several positive things for expansion teams that we have seen recently is that we saw last year Veronica Burton had a career renaissance with the Golden State Valkyries in their inaugural year. She was a really big reason why the Golden State Valkyries became the first ever inaugural team, or first ever expansion team rather, in their inaugural season to make the postseason, was because Veronica Burton just out of nowhere, all of a sudden, just was absolutely on fire with Golden State. We've seen that with Marina Mabrey. Now, Marina Mabrey has had a very successful WNBA career, but she has had the highest average points per night with the Toronto Tempo this year than she has had in her entire career. We're seeing it with Bridget Carlton with the Portland Fire as well. We're seeing some of these players that may not necessarily be household names have these breakout seasons with their first year with expansion teams, which I think is a really important note for expansion teams moving forward, is these are all examples for maybe some players that haven't gotten great opportunities in their previous stops to get wonderful opportunities in expansion teams with, of course, 3 new expansion teams coming to the league over the next couple of years. I also think it's a great sign for the Toronto Tempo. We've talked about this on Hoops 360. You can find it on the Yahoo Sports YouTube page and wherever you get your podcast, myself and Cassandra Nugley. How does Toronto and Portland in their inaugural seasons recreate or at least get close to recreating what Golden State did last year? Golden State is the highest valued WNBA team, and it's only its second year. Golden State made the postseason. Golden State went from being a team that we thought would just kind of be floating around the bottom of the league in standings to then being a playoff team. That's a really high bar for future expansion teams. Here we see Toronto and Marina Mabrey having a record-breaking performance. Here we see, the Portland Fire having some massive wins on their schedule. And whether that comes to fruition in a postseason berth or not, we at least have really interesting and fun basketball and fun performances that we can watch. I've said it before, I'll say it again. In Sandy Brondello, we trust. And here she is continuing to deliver for the Toronto Tempo. But, speaking of Sandy Brondello, she even said in her post-game press conference last night, she said, I've never seen anything like this. And we're talking about Sandy Brondello, right? She has coached the Australian national team. She's won a championship with the New York Liberty. She's coached Brianna Stewart. She's coached Sabrina Ionescu. She's coached some of the best players in this league. And here she is saying, I have never seen anything like it. Really, really awesome to see. And congratulations to Marina Mabrey for that. But some more WNBA news here. The league has given Alyssa Thomas of the Phoenix Mercury a flagrant foul, for her fist to the throat of Caitlin Clark that we saw on Wednesday night in the Fever and Mercury's matchup. She'll be suspended for 1 game with that flagrant 2. Of course, this was a move, an action in the game that was not called for a foul in the moment, that has then gone viral on social media. Coley, did the league get it right, issuing a flagrant 2 to Alyssa Thomas?
Yeah, the league did exactly what I felt like it should have. I didn't say this enough when we were talking on the show yesterday, but I did expect a level of suspension to come. I thought a 1-game suspension would be adequate. Alyssa Thomas didn't deserve anything egregious. There was 3 games or whatever the case is, especially with the condensed nature of this season. A 1-game suspension is adequate, but it was certainly warranted because that was an egregious action. That was most certainly a flagrant 2 action. It deserved a little more attention than it got from the referees in that moment. And like we even said on the show yesterday, when you look at it in live action, you don't really see anything wrong at the time, just because it just kind of feels like a basketball play and they're stumbling and falling over each other. And then you slow it down and you actually have a great angle from underneath the basket of what actually transpired. And that was something that deserved a flagrant 2. She should have been ejected from the game in that moment of time. But since that didn't happen, a 1-game suspension will suffice. And that'll happen this weekend. Alyssa Thomas won't be playing on Saturday in the Mercury's next game. That being said, I don't know if it's going to be enough to quiet the controversy. I think the controversy is still going to go on. The only other solution that I had when we talked about this yesterday was the league just sitting down with players some point in the very, very near future, whether it's this weekend or Monday or some point soon, and saying, hey, this is what we're going to allow. This is what we aren't going to allow. We need to come to a little more of a consensus on this. We need to come to a common ground because we want a fun, competitive, intense kind of play, but we also need to toe the line of respectability in terms of sportsmanship and not going over the line and harassing one specific player or harassing any players. In some ways you could argue that certainly did feel targeted with Caitlin Clark, but Caitlin also has probably deserved some level of heat. Not quite that kind of heat. That's egregious heat, but certainly she may have warranted some level of attention and focus that's been put on her. Either way, I do agree that the suspension should have happened. So I'm glad to have seen that.
The league did get it right. Look, Alyssa Thomas is known to be a physical and aggressive player, but it can't cross the line. I'm all for physicality. I'm all for competitive fire. Give me more of it. We need more of it in sports. But you have to know when enough is enough. You have to know what is crossing the line. And what Alyssa Thomas did on Wednesday night was crossing the line. It was egregious. It was too much. It was too far. And I hope that the WNBA didn't feel pressure from the court of public opinion to make this move. I hope that the WNBA felt like they did it because it was the right thing to do. And what the WNBA needs to do is be more vigilant and not letting the game get to this level of physicality, because the league is not good or as good whenever the superstars are hurt because the game got too physical. It doesn't need to look like a WrestleMania match. So consistency in officiating is of the utmost importance. Appreciate Coley Harvey for hanging out with us this week. Have a great and safe weekend. We'll see you on Monday.